Good afternoon, my beautiful babes and babettes. I am your resident active advocate, and today we continue with our look-see at the TRC, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I left off yesterday on call to action number 75 under the heading of missing children and burial information. So today we will be going through calls number 76 through 80. Apparently I can't talk. But 76 is the last one underneath that heading, so hopefully it will be slightly less upsetting than yesterday. But I guess we will have to see about that. Mind you, I'm not saying either, by the way, that being upset about this kind of thing, I'm not saying that that's not justified. That is 100% justified, just so long as we act in the benefit of other people who have gone through these experiences and to this day continue to go through these experiences. Because as I have said, it's not that Native people are voiceless, it's just that other people aren't listening. So perk up your ears and listen, and pay attention to what people say. That's what we have to do in order to form some right relations between one another. So, as we continue, call to action number 76. We call upon the parties engaged in the work of documenting, maintaining, commemorating, and protecting residential school cemeteries to adapt strategies in accordance with the following principles. 1. The Aboriginal community most affected, shall lead the development of such strategies. That makes sense because I said yesterday that these places were often in very rural areas, but it's quite likely that you would get more children from one nation than another, depending on where these places were. So, for example, if they were in more northern territory, more northern lands, you would probably get a higher population of Inuit children than you would of any other demographic. And as I have said, that there are over 500 distinct Indigenous nations within Canada, and that's just Canada. But at the same time, the populations are not going to be dispersed evenly. So naturally, you're going to get more children from a certain nation than from others, depending on what location you're in. So this one is saying that the population most affected should have the say in how these burial grounds are dealt with. And I think that just makes sense from a logistics standpoint. Okay, so 2. Information shall be sought from residential school survivors and other knowledge keepers in the development of such strategies. That also makes sense because if they were the ones affected by this system that was never even intended to go right, I'm not going to say this system gone wrong, because it didn't go wrong. It was wrong from the very beginning. But the people who were most affected by this system should be the ones to make these calls, especially in the name of murdered victims. 3. Aboriginal protocols shall be respected before any potentially invasive technical inspection and investigation of a cemetery site. All right, this one is, hang on, I'm going to maximize my camera. This one, especially, is quite particularly relevant in Canada at the moment due to the searches that have been conducted around various residential schools throughout the country. And these searches continue, as far as I know, and the death toll of the uncovered bodies, I don't say discovered bodies, because the people themselves have known about this for years and years and years. It's just that the mainstream society has not been listening. But the uncovering of these bodies has led to a great deal of trouble for the various nations. And they are the ones who should say what is done with these places. Yesterday, I kind of just, I said that they ought to tear down these institutions and build memorials, but that's a very Eurocentric, white-centric kind of method to use. I think, get rid of the bad completely and just replace it with memorial. That's not necessarily how this works throughout the various cultures in Canada. That and the fact that no one else has the right to make a call on how these children should be commemorated, and within the various communities on how they should be remembered. That depends on the community, that depends on the say of their family. There are many different factors that go into deciding how these things should go. But the Eurocentric voice should not be, I would say, should not even be part of the equation, but should certainly not be the loudest voice in the room. We need to shut up and listen, says me as I continue talking about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So I do understand that, yes, I'm being a hypocrite. Thanks for noticing. I don't like hypocrites, but it's also important to get this knowledge out. So for anyone who likes listening to a hypocrite, here you are. I'm not really feeling better since yesterday about, just this whole situation. It was upsetting to read the ones that I read yesterday. And yeah, I don't really think that people who look like me should have a say in what goes on in this country regarding Indigenous rights, regarding the possible exhumation and burial of the children whom we have found thus far. And that is all up to the various communities who have been so strongly affected by this horrific tragedy. And I shouldn't even say tragedy because that sounds very passive. This horrific crime. Crime against humanity, people. Call it what it is, and then you can look it in the face. All right. New heading. National Center for Truth and Reconciliation. I have not read any of these, have not spoiled myself on any of these, just like yesterday with the upsetting ones. So we will see how this goes. Pardon me if I stumble on my reading. Call to action number 77. We call upon provincial, territorial, municipal, and community archives to work collaboratively with the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation to identify and collect copies of all records relevant to the history and legacy of the residential school system, and to provide these to the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation. All right. As to my knowledge, anyway, but I want to look into this myself. As to my knowledge, this has not happened. If this had happened, then not only would the Catholic Church have released their records, but we would know the full death toll. We would also know exactly where these people are buried, and we would know how many various nations were affected by the crimes of the residential schools. So, as to my knowledge, this has not happened yet. It needs to freaking happen. Considering what is going on in Canada right now, especially, people need to own up to what they did. And yes, this could mean facing jail time, considering that even though this system was perfectly legal up until 1997, this is no longer legal. And I don't know if there is a statute of limitation on a crime like this. A statute of limitation, by the way, is the date past which you can no longer be prosecuted for your crime. So you can't be taken to court. You can't have charges laid against you. And that might apply to the earlier incarnations of these places, because the people running them would obviously no longer be alive, but their children would probably not be alive either. But when it comes to the ones that were run up to 1997, I don't know whether there is a statute of limitations on these crimes. If there isn't, here we go, in terms of legal processes. If there is, then I don't know what would happen. Okay, that would be up to people from the communities themselves to decide how they want to move forward independent of, legal action. But otherwise, take these people to court, if that's still a possibility. I don't know whether it is. I don't know whether it ever was. I don't know whether these people can even be formally charged with a crime, considering that, as I say, at that point, it was perfectly legal to do exactly what they were doing. Abusing, kidnapping, and murdering children. So, yeah, Canada, we're not so high and mighty. Don't pretend we are. Thank you. All right, moving on before I lose my crap entirely. Maximize. All right. 78. We call upon the Government of Canada to commit to making a funding contribution of $10 million over 7 years to the National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation, plus an additional amount to assist communities to research and produce histories of their own residential school experience and their involvement in truth, healing, and reconciliation. Okay, here's the thing. For as long as the schools lasted, $10 million is a drop in the bucket. That looks like a lot of money. It's not at all. I really don't think it is, especially when you are dispersing that money through upwards of 500 different communities. So that is a small, literally, small price to pay for the knowledge that we need to uncover, for the knowledge that we need to get back about what happened at these places. And not only that, but to make that knowledge available to the general public. Because I can sit here and read the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, but I don't know any more than this document knows. I can take a research day and look into certain things that are being talked about in the document. But the people who wrote it, if they don't know, what the histories say, because no one does, and no one at that point seemed to care, other than the Indigenous communities themselves, now in Canada, because of the residential school crisis, we are being forced to care, and I like it. I like it. I don't have the power myself necessarily to uncover the truth, but for those who do, like I say, even if you face legal action for it in Catholic Church, does integrity and virtue not call for you to do exactly as much as you can do in order to help the people who remain? Just saying. Talking to any Catholics in the audience who don't already, agree with me on this point, examine your own conscience, please, because that's what your God gave you a conscience for. Just saying. Next. Okay, under the heading of commemoration. Number 79. We call upon the federal government, in collaboration with survivors, Aboriginal organizations, and the arts community, to develop a reconciliation framework for Canadian heritage and commemoration. This would include, but not be limited to, 1. Amending the Historic Sites and Monuments Act to include First Nations, Inuit, and Métis representation on the Historic Sites and Monuments Board of Canada and its Secretariat. 2. Revisiting the policies, criteria, and practices of the National Program of Historical Commemoration to integrate Indigenous history, heritage values, and memory practices into Canada's national heritage and history. Scrolling up. 3. Developing and implementing a national heritage plan and strategy for commemorating residential school sites, the history and legacy of residential schools, and the contributions of Aboriginal peoples to Canadian history. Oh my gods in heaven. I've said this before, I will likely say it again before we are done here. 2 things I learned about Indigenous peoples in elementary school, and then pretty much nothing again until later high school. All right? Louis Riel, bad guy. Tecumseh, good guy. I don't know if either of those are even true. For one thing, I know that Louis Riel was not a bad guy. He was basically the founder of Manitoba, which, look at a map, it's the province to the left of Ontario. Ontario is bigger than Texas. You can't miss us. I live in Ontario, okay? Tecumseh, good guy. I don't know whether that's true. I would have to look into his history, which we were not encouraged to do when we were small things. The whole idea behind colonialism is to erase history, the history of the oppressed peoples. And I say that in the plural because, as I say, multiple nations in Canada, but this isn't just Canada I'm talking about. This is America. This is the Caribbean. This is Mexico. This is parts of Africa. I'm not going to say the entire continent necessarily. This is Australia. This is, colonialism has affected every single country on Earth to this day, and it continues to do so. The problem with historical erasure is that if we don't know what happened, A, we don't know how to fix it, and B, we're doomed to repeat it. This is why I say that it is very, very important to know one's history, all right? Learn your history. Learn the history of the people who live on this planet with you, because your history is not the only history, all right? There's going to be legions of other peoples whom you can learn about. And I strongly encourage scholarship. I'm a scholar myself, so I'm biased, I guess, but it's important to know this stuff so that we don't repeat the mistakes of history. People have argued that history is a cyclical thing, and I don't disagree with that, but I don't think that that's necessarily the natural course. If there is a bad cycle that keeps going on and on and on because of our ignorance, we need to fix that. We need to not be ignorant. How does one learn how not to be ignorant? By learning. This is why in several videos I say study, I say read. Talk to people you don't understand. Make friends with people you don't know. This is a very important aspect of growing into what I would consider a well-rounded adult. I don't know whether I'm a well-rounded adult, but I'm better than I was when I was a teenager. I'll tell you that for sure. And having just had my birthday a few days ago, now I am old and probably going gray, even though I can't see it. But it presents me with another year in which to learn and better myself, and that sounds so incredibly pretentious, it's not even funny. Love it. Thumbs up. All right, so learn, listen to people, and yes, by the way, get the perspectives of the various nations on what they would actually want done in terms of commemoration, be it art, be it storytelling, be it anything, anything they want, because this is not for us to decide about, okay? This is not our fight. This is not our struggle. Our fight and our struggle is to make those voices that we have oppressed, make those voices heard and make them loud. That's the thing. Get louder! All right, continuing. Number 80. This is the last one for today. We call upon the federal government, in collaboration with Aboriginal peoples, to establish as a statutory holiday, a national day for truth and reconciliation, to honor survivors, their families, and communities, and ensure that public commemoration of the history and legacy of residential schools remains a vital component of the reconciliation process. All right, little piece of good press. good-ish press for Canada here. June has been declared our national month for Indigenous peoples. Unfortunately, that also falls on Pride Month, so it's not that the two have to duke it out. I would love for the two of them to be equally honored and equally validated and equally covered in the press. They are not. So we need to do better on the other side of things, because Pride, love it, very good, we're making progress. But that's for specific demographics, plural, but not necessarily other demographics, plural. So what we need to do, actually, is, as I say, get louder, pay more attention, and get the voices elevated that need to be elevated. So, not mine, all right? Not mine. The voices of people who, to this point, have been ignored. I acknowledge the fact that I have literal white privilege because, holy crap, look at this. I am ghost. I am ghost. This is what I am. I am ghost. But I don't have a problem with that. You know, it's fine. The problem I have is when people who are not ghost are ignored and are, you know, not validated, not made to feel worthy, not made to feel empowered, and like, you know, actual human beings with human rights. Yeah, sorry, water, survival, food, these are basic human rights. And it's not looking that good in a lot of the Indigenous communities, especially when you live on a reserve. I believe in Canada they're called reserves. In America they're called reservations. And, okay, sorry, pointing north and south, theoretically up and down. That's not how north and south actually work, but there you go. So, yeah, Canadian reserves are not the best places to be. Yeah, I was actually just talking to my dad this morning about this. Oneida Nation, which is, I think, the closest reserve to us. And he had a friend there, actually, a little while ago. She passed away, unfortunately. But he said, not the nicest place to be. There's about 5,000 people there, but what he says is that 5,000 people are just kind of sidelined and shoved off into the periphery where we don't have to look at them and or their problems. What I say, though this is not my call to make, is that if all 5,000 voices were joined in perfect unison, then people would listen, because you listen when one person yells at you, right? How about 5,000? You know? Which is why I continue to say, get louder! And I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about these communities that have been historically oppressed and kept down and shoved into the periphery where we don't have to look because we don't want to look. And that, I think, is shameful, cowardly, and quite frankly, a humiliation to my race. And I don't have a problem with that so long as we reverse the tendency of ignorance. 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 You get it? Root word. I'm a word nerd, and I love it, and I get paid to do it sometimes. Woohoo! Okay, so, better than yesterday. Significantly better than yesterday. I'd rather be angry than upset, but you know what? I'm going to feel both ways, and it's right that I should. So, we're actually getting down to the wire here, kind of, because there are only 94 calls to action. So I just finished number 80, so 85, 90, and then 94. So that'll be Friday, Monday, Tuesday, right? Because I take weekends off, and today is Thursday. So on Wednesday, if you will accommodate me, I would like to take a day off to do research on which 6, I do believe it is 6, of the calls to action have actually been implemented up to this point. So I want to do my research on that and then come back to you on Thursday with my video on the 6 that have been upheld. If it is 6, I have to look into that. The number may have changed by this point because I don't know how old that statistic is. Then on Friday, I would like to have, if you please, another day off in order to research for the upcoming series on the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which is very, very pretty. And it's not exactly a document within a document, but the TRC does make reference to it more than once, and I have read it, and it's very, very pretty, and I need to share it with you all because it's very, very pretty. So I'm going to take a research day for that as well. Reread the thing for one thing, but if there's anything I don't understand, and there probably is, look into that. And then go forward from there on the Monday and start that series. Just so y'all know, I have a new job contract starting on September 1st. That's when the contract starts, but I don't know when I actually start working. I have to talk to the schedule person. So there is that, but I do intend to still make time for these videos because I love y'all so much. You know, you're all so very pretty. Just like the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Right? Excellent tie-in. Excellent, Lily. Very good. 2 thumbs up. All right, so that is all for today as I ramble on. But I will see y'all lovely people tomorrow. And have a lovely, wonderful day. And study and read and listen. Thank you. Goodbye. Mwah.